So what we're going to do first off is we'll do the standard intros and icebreakers because people like that. We'll only do 20 people on the intros and icebreakers. The agenda, we'll do a welcome. I'll talk through what we're going to do. We'll run through the stuff from last time. We're going to talk about how do we know which high street stop this is, because there's like 1,000 high street stops in the database, and there's more other stops that are all very similar, railway station stops, or just, you know, stops. The high street is a very obvious one, but there's a lot of London road stops. There's a lot of Manchester road stops, things like that. So how do we know which stop we're looking at? So we're going to talk through localities, suburbs, towns, what those fields are, what we think they are. There will be no points for anyone who copies and pastes the schema. This is about what you think it is and trying to get inside people's heads and understand how everyone's using it. We're going to have a little bit more on those fields just to really drill down and understand what's going on, and then we'll get some feedback. Anything else anyone needs? Anything else anyone says? Actually, I really think we need to cover this off as well. Cool. Right, intros. So if you will follow me on the mural, is anyone unable to get to the mural? Excellent. So I'm going to start off. So we're going to do name, pronoun, where you're from, and village, suburb, or central city. What's your preferred space? So I'm Dr. J. I use they as a pronoun. I'm a service designer, business analyst type, and I'm from ThoughtWorks, and I'm working for Department for Transport on the NaPTAN project. And central city, I grew up in the burbs, don't like them. Let's talk about the central city. So now I get to choose 20 of you as my victims. So we're going to start off with Adam Steed.
Hello, I'm Adam Stead. He as my pronoun. I reside in Portishead, working for Transport for Wales. Portishead near Bristol. It's kind of a town of 20,000 people, but feels rural. But I'm 15 minutes from the centre of Bristol, so I suffer from lack of transport, but easy access to the city by car.
Fantastic, thank you. Andy Hull.
Hi, I'm Andy Hull. I am a he or him. I am from National PTI and village, I would say. I prefer I'm currently in the village, not just outside Dartmoor. So I'll say that.
Andrew Guadalupe.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Andrew Guadalupe. I work for the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. We deal with passenger information, and I'm currently in a town called Huddersfield. So that's where I am.
Is that so? So the question is, which is your preferred? Is that your preferred, or is that where you've washed up?
I'm kind of in a town. So I like towns. I like cities too, but I like towns.
Excellent.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. David Booth.
Hi there, David Booth. I work for Mersey Travel, which is now part of the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. So I guess I'm in a city at the moment in the office for the first time in several weeks. I'm not sure it's my preferred location. I prefer places with public transport, but I'm not sure cities are my preferred location.
Thank you. Let's go for Dan Saunders.
Hi everyone, Dan Saunders from Baseup. I'm a he, him. So I grew up apparently in the largest village in the United Kingdom, a place called Cranley, which is like a town, and I absolutely loved it because you had green fields everywhere, local bus route to local city. It was very, very common. So I'm a village man.
Thank you. Let's go for Vore. And also my apologies for mangling everybody's names. I do it with every language.
Hello, I'm Corey Day from Staffordshire County Council. My preferred location is probably a small town, which is where I'm living now, but I grew up in a small village.
Excellent. The things that I'm not getting is people's pronouns, just to make sure that we use them right. So, Vare, your
Right.
pronoun?
She or her.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Derek Riley.
Hi, I'm Derek Riley, Warwickshire County Council. I live in Warwick, which is the county town. So happy living in a town, not too far away from sort of what you might call leafy Warwickshire, or you know, the likes of Coventry in the West Mids. Preferred pronoun is he or him.
Thank you very much. Di Wright.
Hi, I'm Di Wright from Connectees Valley. I'm a she, her. I prefer rural. I live in a tiny little village right in the middle of the North Yorkshire Moors, and it's perfect.
Nice, nice. Thank you for that. Leslie Dransfield.
Hi, I'm a she or her. Live in Torbay, public transport officer for Torbay Council.
Fantastic, thank you. Mark Hodgkiss.
Mark Hodgkiss, Cambridge County Council Public Transport Team, he or him. I live in a town. Quite happy to escape out into the rural areas, but prefer the near all the facilities normally.
Thank you for that. Cheers. James Lawson.
Hi, I'm James. I'm he, him. I'm from North Lincolnshire Council, and I'm a suburb boy because you're best of both worlds.
or it's a complete spork and it's the worst of everything. Jonathan Bigwood.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Bigwood, he or him. I'm Senior Public Transport Officer for Central Bedfordshire Council. Recently got back into doing NaPTAN travel line data after 10 or so years away from it. At the moment I live in what's either a village or a suburb of a large town in Berkshire. Native to South London, so by nature a city person.
South Londoners, I've started to develop a South London accent on top of the New Zealand South Auckland accent. Lynn.
Hello, I'm Lynn Anderton. My pronoun is she, her, and my preference is a suburb.
And where are you from, Lynn?
I'm from Transport for West Midlands. Sorry.
Oh, fantastic. No problems. Mark Tyra.
Sorry, just getting things back. I'm Mark Tyra for Transport for Greater Manchester. I'm a he, him, and I missed the start of whatever else I'm supposed to be adding on to that.
It's on the mural. It's whether you're a village, suburb, or central city person.
I prefer sort of outer suburbs, so easy access to get to towns and cities where it's busy but quiet enough for a nice, enjoyable lifestyle. I am currently sort of on the outer edge of Warrington and Manchester, nice. Halfway in between. So, yeah, best of both worlds, really.
We all also are aware that I have zero understanding of the geography of the UK, so you could be saying anywhere and I would be nodding.
There's nice fields and gardens, but close enough to cities and towns.
I like it. I like it. Melanie.
Hi, it's Melanie Dolan from Kent County Council. My pronoun is she, and I like villages.
Thank you for that. Neil McKinnon.
Hello, Neil McKinnon from Stagecoach, based up in a village just outside Perth. Yeah, village for me, he, him.
Thank you. Rich Taylor.
Hi, my name is Rich. I'm a they, them. I'm a product manager at Ito World, working on the Analyze Bus Open Data project. I'm in suburban Cambridge and I like it here. Public transport provision is good and I'm lucky enough to be able to cycle most places I need to go.
Nice, nice. Let's go for Sean McDonald.
I'm Sean McDonald. I'm also work at Ito World. Working with the data pipelines. I'm a he, him, or they. I'm kind of a suburb person, kind of like the being able to get into the city centres fairly easily. Generally, there's fairly good public transport, but also able to get out into the rural areas relatively easily as well.
Nice, nice. Right, I'm going to go for one person and then we'll swing to Adrian. So Adrian gets to talk for a moment. So Tansy, let's go to you.
Hi, I'm Tansy Appleby. I'm from PTI Cymru. My pronouns are she, her. And even though I live in a central city, I'm a village person at heart. That's where I grew up. I want to go back at some point.
Fantastic, thank you. And Adrian, it's your turn. And should I tell people what today is?
No, it's okay. Hi, I'm Adrian Falconer. I'm the project owner for the redevelopment of NaPTAN. I'm he, him, and I prefer city centres because I can't drive, which is why I love public transport so much and so happy to be involved in this work. Today's my birthday. Jay's scheduled this meeting on my birthday because they know how much I love public transport. Thank you, Jay.
This was a present. This was a present and a gift. So, looking at the agenda, we've done the intros and welcome. We'll go through a quick outcome from last time where we talked about precisely and accurately where a bus stop is, and then we're going to go into talking about NaPTAN or NPTG fields and how we're using them and how some of them are being used and are we using them and how we're linking them together and how we think they should be linked together and just trying to get our heads around it. And I know that's stuff we've touched on a couple of meetings ago, but we kind of need to dive a little bit more into it. So very quickly, quick outcomes from last time. This is at number 3. We confirm that all the local authorities are giving us easting northings to the correct precision of a metre by a metre. That's amazing. That's fantastic. We at least got confirmation that there is one piece that's working. One of the interesting parts of that, I'm just going to lock that. One of the interesting parts of that discussion was that we concluded that the best point to measure a bus stop from was where somebody needs to stand to catch a bus. So there's that focus on that customer experience. So we got into lots of discussions, whether it's the shelter or the point or where the bus leaves or where the bee is on the road or whatever like that. And then somebody said, why don't we measure it from where the passenger has to stand, where the person has to stand to catch the bus? And that makes a whole pile of sense. So we'll find a way to kind of publish that and put that out. But that's, don't go around and remap all of your bus stops, but that's kind of the agreement, the consensus agreement that it should be measured from where you need to stand to catch a bus as a passenger, because that's a really good use. That's looking at the very end user of all of this data. Now, we at DFT have taken the question about centrally performing the easting northings to lat-long conversion, and I've put in its OSGB 36 to WSG 84 for any of the technical peoples. We've taken this to the SRO, and we're going to take it to the SRO board to look at where it might fit in our priorities, and we're going to have a response in the next month. So it's taking us a little bit of time to figure out what we're going to do, how we'd put it into the backlog and all of those things. So we just wanted to let you know that we're still thinking on it. Meanwhile, there's a really good Ordnance Survey map. Ordnance Survey have a page on how to do this. And we suggest that this is the only method that's used to do the translation between the two, from eastings, northings into latitude, longitude. This is the method that if we put something in, we would be using, and this is the method that we suggest anyone uses. Is there any questions on that or any thoughts before we ramble along? Cool. So moving along a little bit quicker than I thought we would, localities and suburbs. So some of you are data producers, so you'll use an orange sticker, and some of you are data consumers, so you'll use a blue sticker. And what I'd like you to do is to have a look at those yellow stickers and tell me what you think that is. Tell me how you use it. Tell me what you think it's for and why it exists. Now, there are no points to anyone who copies and pastes the schema in there. I've read all 4 versions. I've read all versions of the schemas that are out there. So I know what the schema says, but I want to understand how you're using it and how you're thinking about it. Because as we discovered, with a lot of these, there's a lot of little nuances that go on at different local authorities. There are a lot of slightly different things that go on all the time. So put these in, and there's there's locality name, parent and grandparent locality name, suburb, town, and locality centre. So just let me know how those go, and I'm going to give us about 10 minutes. And when I do the publish the recording, I'll reduce this 10 minutes down to almost no time whatsoever, just to save us all. Right. Are there any questions before we head off on this? Everyone's cool? Sweet. I shall start the timer. So remember, if you're a producer, you're going to put it in orange, and if you're a consumer, you're going to put it in blue. And if you don't know how to change the color, you click on the sticky and it comes up with a little bar, and in there it will be a little box that looks like a color. When you click on that, you get to select the colors. Hopefully that made sense. Actually, and I'm going to add another quick question down here, which is a bonus question.
5 minutes later.
If you need any clarification or anything like that, we've also got the chat available on here if you don't feel like speaking up.
Aren't town and suburb fields part of NaPTAN as opposed to being an NPTG?
Mark, that is an interesting question, and that is one of the ones that I wanted to ask.
Yeah, okay. I just remember them. I've only seen them fields under stop creation in NaPTAN, which generally we haven't used.
Thank you for muting me, somebody. I am okay, so we're going to go, we're going to cover off what the differences are and try and understand that difference. Because we seem to be asking the same thing twice, and I want to make sure if we are. David, that's a really great point, that they're out of date fields, name and post from on high and unchanging. Which fields are you exactly talking about? And whoever just keeps muting me, I'm going to raise my eyebrow and give you null points.
Yeah, I just noticed I was muted as well whilst I was talking. I mean, the feeling for our asset management people who put in these the stop data is that they choose from a list which they have no control over, other than they were put in by somebody 15, 20 years ago. And if we can change them, we'd love to. But if we change, I mean, another feeling is that if you change a suburb name to something else, you get the sort of the estate agent conundrum of it's really South Chelsea, not it's not a nice area, we want to change the name of it.
Right. That's really interesting, and I'm going to make a note to talk about that relationship between, and it's the relationship, what you're talking about is the relationship between NPTG, which is the Gazetteer, and it's also known as NaPTAG because we like to try and pronounce things a mouthful of consonants. And then there's also NaPTAN, which is holding most of the data and most of us are putting data into. So it's just really understanding the relationship between those at an organizational level as well.
Yeah,
so
I think
it'll be great.
We're coming at it from such a low level that they've been set for us. We've got this list we would like to change them. We don't know whether we're allowed to change them even, so that's one of the reasons that I joined this.
That's really cool to understand, David, and I think that's one of I've made a note, and I will add a little sticky somewhere so that I come to it. I just need to add a sticky because I've copied stuff. There we are. So relationship. Actually, and I should ask this between NPTG and NaPTAN editing. So could everyone just up the top, but by number 4, there's a new yellow sticky called relationship between NaPTAN and NaPTAG, and in the last 90 seconds or so, could people who are producers just put a little sticky there and let me know if you can edit your NPTG data. If you do it via the website, that would be an additional little help. Or if you just get to use the list that was created a very long time ago, and that's all that you've got. And I know, David, yours will be, we've got a list from 20 years ago and that's all that we've got.
Yes.
But so I know NaPTAG provides the locality. I want to understand, can you edit it? Do you edit it? Are the people who do the NaPTAN edits the same people who do the NaPTAG edits? So just trying to get my head around that little operational queue. Does that make sense? Cool. Because we also know that NPTG is edited. I think the fields change about 6 times a month if you're lucky. We get 6 to 8 changes a month. I went through and checked all the data compared to the several hundred on NaPTAN. So it's a very, very different level of complexity as well. Cool. I'll let all the people who are producers quickly throw some stuff up there.
The weather has gone somewhat biblical here.
Oh, that means it's likely to head my way.
Soon.
Thank you for the heads up. I've also got somebody coming to pick up a parcel as well. It's that time of day when everyone comes past to drop things off. So I will let you know how the biblical weather goes when it arrives here. It seems to be coming from your direction, Adrian. Right.
We don't normally get snow in London. It's quite unusual.
What, you've actually had snow, or was it just hail?
The whole ground is completely white outside my house.
Okay, excellent. Ian, I will, if you put your thoughts into the chat, I'll move them across. So let's start off with the first question, which was, what is a locality? So let me just run through these. Let me just run through these and I'll try and tidy it up so I can read it. I'll get rid of some of these blanks and bits and pieces around so that I can read everything. So it is, a locality is the name of an area like a village town. Broadly, narrows down the location of a set of bus stops. A locality is an area, not a point, where someone would say that they live or work. Behind the scenes is used to organise points to allow them to be searched for efficiently in journey planners. Name of an area that would be easily recognised by a resident or visitor, where they would say they are if asked. Recognisable area, town, village, suburb, attraction. name of village, district, suburb, or city town centre. An area that someone would say that they live or work, e.g. village, large housing, commercial development. A unique locality name for the specific area, village, small area of town, city, to help narrow down where a bus stop is. Where I live or where I work, where I want to get to or travel from, broadly speaking. I use to map the locations of suburbs and localities. I can also generate boundaries to calculate population counts, demographic areas. There is no national list gazetteer of suburbs, so this is an important data set. To help the traveller, locality names comes from the NaPTAG data, which identifies town, suburb, village, etc. A name a customer would use to search for a general place to travel to and from. Area where a bus terminates, which is used to set the head sign of where the bus will terminate. Name of an area known locally and can be seen on OS maps. Well, that's much more down to grandparents, so we'll leave that down there. Let me come up. Parent, oh no, an area someone would say that they live. Okay, cool. So we seem to be relatively grouped on what a locality is. Is there anything that anyone has, any thoughts that anyone has about a locality before we move on? And Jonathan, I see your comment about NPTG, and I'll get to it when we get to the wider comment about it. Somebody's given us a nice map. Thank you very much for that. We're trying to figure that out. And there's a hand up, and I can't see who it is because I don't have enough bits and pieces. Adrian.
Yes, it's me. I think it's important that we make sure that we focus on what you said just a moment ago, and that is localities are names that people themselves use today about where they say they live, where they say they want to go, because we have historic localities in our system named many decades ago, and the town has been developed, and we have localities of names that people really just don't use, so they are meaningless. So two things here: A, we need to focus on what people are calling them today, not what they used to call them. But also we do need the ability to be able to change them sensibly and across the whole area, so that they are meaningful to the people that are using them today, right now.
So for example, just to make sure that I've got it right, I live in Southwark, but if I ever want to travel to and from, I usually say I'm traveling from Elephant and Castle, because Elephant and Castle is like the big blocky place where I am. Southwark is too big, even though Southwark might actually have been small enough at one point in time for me to say I want to travel from Southwark. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about, or have I too Londonized it in my trying to simplify it down?
Well, yes, that is, but there's more than that. For example, here we had an area called Talbot Woods, and it's been severely developed. It's been really developed. So people don't say they live in Talbot Woods. They say they live in Winton. They say they want to go to the university. It just doesn't get used. Whereas years ago, it was meaningful. Today, it is meaningless.
So it's about keeping them updated. I love that example. So there was a ruralish area called Talbot Woods that got developed and now has a university and a little thing called something beginning with a W and all kinds of different places, and that's what people would be using, and we need to split Talbot Woods off into those. Gotcha.
But essentially, it's moved up a hierarchy.
Neil, is that what you were saying? So Talbot Woods would have moved up the hierarchy, or Talbot Woods should go because nobody uses it?
No, I suppose that's a tricky one. It's semantics, isn't it?
And is it and is it I think there's also a thing, because you all know your peoples well. You know the people that you're the passengers that you've got, you know the language that they use, you know the words that they will use for those areas. So you know what the local name for somewhere is. And I won't. So how do we give you the authority, the autonomy, the agency to go and make sensible changes to this list of places? Is a really interesting little thing to unpick.
I think that's a really important point that somebody has made, and that, you know, this is all really to benefit the customer who's getting on a bus and wants to go from a local neighbourhood that they understand by a certain name. It's really down to the local data collectors to be able to define and maintain that list of that gazetteer of localities, the local areas. And it was me that put the map on, because this is one area that I've just been working on. All the gold dots are NaPTAN stops that are called Bedford as a locality, and you can see there's one gold dot way up to the north that's an outlier.
Wow.
That is actually so, and the grey dots are the NaPTAG dots.
Wow.
So that shows you the discrepancy. And, you know, when I sort of say I create boundaries, so you can, in GIS, you can create a blob that sort of says Bedford is, and it takes in all the points, and so you can build up geographies to then get census data to figure out, okay, well, how many people live there, how much of the market are we serving, and so I'm coming at it from that sort of research point of view as opposed to a customer facing point of view. But it shows that the data can have numerous uses, but there's inaccuracies in there, and you know, it's I've sort of said there's no national gazetteer of suburbs. This allows us to build up area maps of what suburbs are, because there are none. Ordnance Survey has some points for where some suburbs are named, but that's just one point, which cartographically might not be close to where that suburb actually is, because it's constrained by where the space is on the map. But what NaPTAG allows us to do is to actually create areas for local areas, and it's based on what people on the ground actually think. So having local authorities or whoever is collecting the data be able to maintain suburb data is key in my eyes.
Yeah, this is such a good viewpoint, and you've given us such a good example there, Neil. I cannot thank you enough for that, because it's really clear what the difference is, and it's really helping me get a real sense. And I love that you also mapped in the grey dots that are the NPTG stops. I'm going to throw it open to Andy just to get, and then Mark.
Yeah, I put a note on there as on the mural board as well to say that my local authority owners, including Adrian, has access to NPTG so that we can update all the data. It was originally put in by consultants from the OS mapping many, 20 odd years ago when Travelline started. But it is vital that all of our local authority stop owners have access to NPTG so they can edit it. A point about NPTG being a point, they are points because you have to journey plan to it. Unless you use locality centres to be your final stop, you use the final point of the locality to walk to as your final destination or your origin of a journey. And on localities, the locality from NPTG is the second most common gazetteer used for all journey planners, behind postcodes. Or it used to be on our last marketing research, or research we got from the data from our servers.
Interesting. I might take Andy. I might have a chat with you and possibly Julie from Travelline, because I know that they have a really good journey planner as well, and just get some sense of how much locality is used over postcode, because we've had feedback that postcode's more often used, but I think it's really interesting to understand that locality and that importance is really, really key for us. Mark.
Yeah, well, postcode is the most common. Sorry, postcode is the most common, but locality is a close second.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to understand that rich mix there. Mark.
Hi, yeah, sorry. Just going back onto things like the gold dots and on that map there, saying, well, us in Greater Manchester, we've always, as things have progressed and got into bigger areas, we've then created smaller localities to really define these smaller little areas. And we've never sort of had a problem at, I mean, maybe because we've always had the editing rights of it or whatever, but we've always created or renamed localities as and when needed for if areas have changed names or whatever, and then created new localities and then moved stops into these smaller localities. And then if these smaller localities are part of the sort of slightly bigger area, just like in the map I've just put on there, we then told that smaller locality it is a child of this parent locality. So then when someone says, oh, I'm going to Hindley, and if they get given an option of Hindley Wigan or Hindley somewhere else, at least they know, well, which Hindley to pick.
That's really key, and I think this is one of the things where I've been trying to unpick the data a little bit, because there's a locality and a grandparent locality, a parent and a grandparent locality, and I want to understand how we think we're using the parent and grandparent and how much we're expecting NaPTAG to lift the weight, and whether we should have that both, or we should just hold it all in NaPTAG, if that makes sense. So just trying to understand, should I put in the locality number or name for a bus stop to say where it is, and should I also put in its parent and grandparent, or should I expect NaPTAG to do that automatically, that layering? Because we've got a mixed model at the moment, and I'm trying to understand what's going on there and just kind of unpick it slightly, but also not unpick it in a way that breaks it for people.
Yeah, well, I think, if you're doing it in a search way and you say, oh, if there's 5 Hindleys in the country and they're all, even if you just went into Google Maps, and you just search the name of a town and there's 5 or 6 different names, it will just give you the options of them, saying which one do you want. So at least if if the localities are hierarchied correctly for something like this, then and it's also in NaPTAG, there's everything has to be a unique name. So if there are multiple ones, I've just remembered, that's where the unique I can't remember the field, but there is a unique identifier field, isn't there, which puts a bracket into something to say Hindley, and then if we try creating a locality that's already named somewhere else, then we have to then go put something in a bracket to say, oh yeah, well, this is Wigan.
Okay, so that's really interesting, because that's not quite what the schema tells me. So let's dig into that in a bit, but let's first go off and hear from Tansy.
Sorry, just to butt in there, it's the qualifier field that you're looking for there, Mark.
Yes, that's the one.
Put it in brackets, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't remember the name of it.
Excellent. Field and NPTG. I'm not going to bring up NPTG right now. We'll continue going through this because I'm trying to unpick. I've got some various bits to unpick, and we'll just unpick them. And if we get time, I'll go back to going through some of those NaPTAG fields. But undoubtedly, we will have another one of these. Tansy.
Yeah, thanks. I had a point a little while ago, but I just wanted to give the Travelling Cymru perspective on the journey planning aspect of NaPTAG and its usefulness. We found quite early on that NaPTAG wasn't entirely useful when it came to journey planning, simply because the point of the locality is not always the most sensible place for a journey to begin. So if you take Cardiff Central, for example, Cardiff Central is a locality, but where do you place that point? Is it placed at the bus stop, at the bus station? Do you place it near the train station? Do you place it right in the middle of the entire locality? That's an entirely different thing. So for journey planning purposes, we created a custom gazetteer, which includes NaPTAG, but it also includes postcodes, but it also includes custom localities, which we can then create and edit and maintain ourselves, which basically it's for optimizing journey planning. So NaPTAG we think is useful. It's a starting point. We've used it kind of like as a framework, but really when you're coming down to the customer experience, you need something that's a little bit more refined. For example, University Hospital of Wales is huge. It contains about 10 bus stops. That's a place that quite often people want to journey plan to and from, and so we need that to be part of the Gazetteer, but it doesn't fit into NaPTAG, just as an example.
That's really good, Tansy, and we will definitely sit down and talk to you more about NPTG. And I also love that you've created your own separate customized Gazetteer on top of NPTG, which says a lot in my head as to what might need to happen. Roger.
Hi, it's just a point about how parent and grandparent localities are assigned and used behind the scenes. Where you don't have to assign a grandparent locality in NaPTAN. You do have to assign a locality. If that locality has a parent and a grandparent locality, those will be automatically assigned when the NaPTAN is processed. It's nothing that you have to do at the desk. Now, how it's used in terms of search engines, if I'm going to say the Ellingham Industrial Estate in Ashford, okay, if I'm told to go to such and such a stop, I might know it's at the Ellingham Industrial Estate. Brilliant. So I can just put in Ellingham Industrial Estate, such and such a stop, and it'll find it. I might only know it's in Ashford, but Ashford is the parent locality of Ellingham Industrial Estate. So I can search Ashford, such and such a stop, and it will still find the same stop, because there should not be two stops within the same hierarchy that have the same common name and indicator. Essentially, anything that has a locality of Ellingham Industrial Estate belongs to the top level locality of Ashford.
Okay.
And yes, with something like a university, if it has multiple stops, or even if it only has one stop, but people would regard it as an area that they live or work, you can of course create that as a locality within NetGaz.
So I think this comes down to how some people have set it up. I think it sounds like there's been little over the last, I mean, NaPTAN and NaPTAG are old enough to take for a drink. So over the last 20 years, these systems, everyone's developed their own little ways around their unique and wonderful ways of doing things. And what we're trying to do is just understand how much variation we have and look at how we can get people kind of a little bit back towards doing something the same, but being aware what's in the data needs to really reflect what's on the ground and really reflect that user experience. Does that make sense to everybody? Sweet. Right. Very, very quickly, parent and grandparent. Now, this is where I think we're asking people for the same thing twice, because NaPTAG has your Russian dolls of localities and parents and grandparents, and everything stacks all the way up to country. But in NaPTAN, we're also asking for parent and grandparent. Now, almost nobody fills them out. There's a few parents, there's no grandparents that are filled out in NaPTAN, but they're definitely filled out in NPTG. So I just wanted to understand from anyone who's filled them out in NaPTAN, if there's any reason that you did that, if it's like it's somewhere and it's on the edge of a locality, or it might be between two localities, or it's the bus stop on the edge of town and it could be in the suburb or in the suburb and it's kind of right in the middle. Is there reasons for holding it in two places, or is this just one of those magical data moments? Roger.
If we're talking about town and suburb, I don't know that those have, well, if anybody can tell me whether they have a use within search engines, that would be great. I don't know that they do, and one of the problems with them is they're a free text field, so a misspelling when you're entering it, which you can't do with a locality because you're having to pick from a list that you've pre-created, a misspelling as you put that in, just a miscapitalization, or somebody puts a full stop at the end, all of a sudden you have a different search term to look for there. They're also not arranged in any hierarchy. So those are just freestanding fields. So, so for those, I do feel, because the top level hierarchy usually is the post, town, or city. Well, not the post town, but the town you're in. That having town as a free text field is kind of redundant.
So we
love
will
to hear
get
other
to
people's
those.
views.
We will get to those in 2 minutes, Roger. You're trying to run ahead of me.
Sorry.
I was still running back to. We have NaPTAN, lots of lovely layers. You can shuffle up and shuffle down, Wigan up and downs. So you go Wales or down to Cardiff or down to Central Cardiff, essentially within NaPTG. In NaPTAN, when I put in a stop, I'm asked for its locality, but I'm also asked for its parent and grandparent. Now, I don't understand why we need to ask for something we've already got. And I was just trying to see if there was a nuance that I hadn't considered here. There was something
don't actually need to assign it. You need to assign a locality. You don't need to assign parent or grandparent. That's done behind the scenes for you.
And that is what I am assuming, but I wanted to double check that there's not a nuance that I'd missed. So I'm going to throw it to Andy and see if Andy, who's got his hand up, has the answer there.
I was going to ask, can you sort them? Can you find out which localities use them or see how many are entered? I'm pretty sure none of are entered at my end for my local.
None
local authorities.
None are entered at your end. I did have it up. I possibly closed it so my computer didn't die. I have one parent locality out of all of them. Oh no, that's just looking at High Street. Sorry, I did a quick, just clear the filter. Okay. I'm not going to be able to do it live simply because I have too many things trying to go on. I don't believe I've got anyone filling them out, but I also wanted to understand that if it was there for a purpose.
Jay, do you want me to check in the background while you're?
If you could, just find out how many any stops that have a parent locality.
Yeah, I'm on it. I'll come back.
I know Andy's don't, because Andy, I did a detailed search through one of yours. Mark, you had your hand up and it's just gone down. Okay, so scrolling down to Suburb, which is a free text field, as has been pointed out, there is a free text field called Suburb that is in NaPTAN that doesn't pull anything from NPTG, as far as I can tell. It's just there, and I wanted to understand what people thought of it, if anyone knows why it's there and what it's there for, because I don't see many people using it, but I wanted to understand again if there's a nuance that I haven't been able to pick up.
Also at GM, we've never used it. We just do everything through localities. They might wondering if there's there might be there could be potentially a use for it if you enter the town and suburbs in NPTG, so you don't have to do it for every single stop. So if you just pick a locality and all that town suburb stuff for assisting any search engines, journey planners or whatever, they might be able to use that information, but that's all I can say for. But no one's going to be no one's going to enter that for every single stop that they've got.
Yeah,
and especially when you've got 15,000 stops.
Absolutely. And this is what I'm trying to understand, Mark, because we've got a gazetteer that's got the hierarchy, but we've got these two extra fields that are free text, and I was just trying to understand what people thought that they did, and if anyone thinks that they're using them in a particular way or is using them for anything in particular. Adrian Glover.
Yes, a free text field like that every now and again is really, really useful. People are saying it wouldn't be filled in for every single stop. Absolutely correct. But there are occasions when it's worthwhile to have something that's almost non-searchable, so that people that are creating the data or using the data can put notes almost in that help them to manage and identify these without the search engines or the journey planners picking up on them.
Okay, so this is kind of like a notes, but not a notes, because the notes field is elsewhere and we use it for generally saying some of the most random things or putting in information that's held elsewhere. But that's an entirely separate piece that I'll get to eventually. I'll get to what do we do with the notes field. So you're occasionally using it as like a little, oh, this is the one that's here, or the one that's on the boundary, or the one that's for this. Is that the way that you're using it?
Yeah, that's the sort of thing. And you're right, you can use the notes field, but that's a long way further down the schema. So it's better to have it when you're actually looking at that line on your screen.
Okay, so it's like a close by notes field that says, oh, this is for this suburb or for this town. So
yeah,
they're not
rightly or wrongly, that's how it has been used on occasions.
Right, because I know that it's not been used very much, and that was part of what I was trying to understand, because like I said, I think there was some nuance there that I just couldn't find. So
our NaPTAN management tool actually lets us search by town and suburb and stuff, but we don't have any stops that actually have any filled in. This NaPTAN management tool being a lot newer program than our data.
Well, it's honestly, Mark, I don't think anyone's got it filled in. I haven't seen many people having filled this out at all. Somebody's got here with town. We only used we're part of a larger town. So is this like there's I grew up in a place called Papakura, and but I grew up in the south of Papakura. So it was a part of a larger town. So would that be essentially for that kind of where you've split a suburb in half or something like that?
No, I think it's myself, Mark from Cumbria. It's in a town or a city like Carlisle where we've got various estates, Harrowby, St Anne's, whatever. We use that as we use Carlisle as the town and then the suburb name. But if it was a village, the village would go in the town block rather than in the suburb.
Okay, so the suburb name you're using for like the estate area.
Yep.
And then you're using the town for either the village name or the suburb name.
So we don't use. I mean, I think going back to when it was first set up, I think the person who set it up was often using it as the postal town. So Carlisle was the postal town, and then you'd have Dalston or whatever. But no one would say who lives in Dalston would say they lived in Carlisle. Well, if you live in Harrowby, you would say you lived in Carlisle. So that's if that's where you say you lived, we put it in the town block. But if you live in an estate, then put it in the suburb block as well.
Okay, cool. I think I've got that. Fortunately, we've got this recorded, so we can go back and sort that out. Adrian Falconer, I saw you put your hand up physically, so obviously you've got an answer for something.
Yeah, there's 10,000 records with grandparent that have got grandparents in them, and they all have a parent as well. Though I think there's probably more that have parents. I haven't filtered on that, but I can do. But so there's 10,000.
Okay.
So there's a few, but that's obviously there's 400,000 stops in NaPTAN, so that's quite a small proportion.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that you and I will need to go through is which ACTO codes are they under? Are they under a mix? Are they under just one? All of those lovely things that we'll need to go through to pull that apart. Adrian Glover, you're on mute.
Click the wrong thing, sorry. Just picking up on that previous point, just before you, Adrian Falconer, once again, it's what people themselves call the places they want to go that is important, not just what we think they ought to be called. So if everybody is naming or putting into their journey planners or their search engines particular names, whether they are, semi-official or not, those are the terms that the travelling public are searching on, and those are the terms that our data needs to be able to recognise, whichever field they are in. But it also needs to sort of have an understanding of how those colloquial names, for want of a better term, fit into the official names, whether they are postcode zones, town names, villages, and so on. So I think it's people that matter here, and it's what they're actually calling them, and that's coming over loud and clear. I don't know what you think.
I totally agree. I think what people call it, it's trying to figure out if there's spaces, because I know there's also an entire table of NaPTAG called alternate names as well, which is almost doing my head trying to figure out how those link and whether some of them are old and new places and things like that. Yeah, I will get through this before I lose my mind. Mark.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say that I was just putting a note in the chat then saying the parent and grandparent localities, they're added from the hierarchies in NPTG. We don't assign them down at stop level. We'll only assign a specific stop to a bottom line locality, and then the whole process in the background then adds in the hierarchies that a data producers created in the NPTG platform.
So that's interesting. So your program is in fact adding them into the NaPTAN and assuming that it needs to add it into the NaPTAN as well as having it spelt out in the NaPTAG field. So that's an interesting point, and I will go through and have a look at your data closely because I know that you're on a slightly different system to everyone else, and I'll really try and understand what's going on there. And I think, Adrian, this might, if you go and have a look, 10,000 would be most of Greater Manchester. So we might find that it's all under 180, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
Adrian's
down
on
at,
mute.
yeah, I was going to say, yeah, down at stop level, we will only assign whatever the bottom line locality is to say this is this little group of stops.
Yeah.
And then it's in MPTG, we might say Marsh Green is part of Wigan, which is part of somewhere else.
Yeah, so that layering
hierarchies.
Yeah, it's just there's two places for the layering, and so there's one in NPTG, which we all completely understand. There seems to be another one that's put into NaPTAN in the NaPTAN fields that aren't auto-populated from NPTG. Only the locality. Once you've got the locality, it assumes you're going to go through NPTG to get the hierarchy. And I'm just trying to understand why we've got it in there twice. I will take what Adrian's done and go through it, and him and I will go through and try and pull apart why that's coming in.
It is interesting because you've got different locality name to grandparent and parents. They're all on some of them they're all completely different.
Yeah, so
interesting.
Adrian, you and I have a lot of data analysis to go and play with, or basically you, me, Holly, and Chloe, or me,
Yeah,
Holly, and Chloe.
Me.
Yeah,
I was going to say, is it not when NaPTAN gets built, it takes in the MPTG data, it compiles it in?
No, it doesn't. That's a really interesting assumption that you made there, Mark. That the fields, parent and grandparents.
I'm wondering if it's then our NaPTAN management tool then that in the background, if we select the bottom line locality, it knows already. Then that's all that thing.
Because I believe, and this is the assumption that I'm going to go test, that once you've put the locality in, it's getting the hierarchy only from NPTG. And I want to understand if it's different between some of them when it comes down to what's been put in the NaPTAN fields and what's in NPTG. So that's going to be a nice little game that me and some of the other, or me and the BAs will play.
You're going to make me go and look at me in my raw NaPTAN data now that I send up to yourselves.
It's okay.
Check all that. Do you want me to send you the file that I've pulled off? Because
okay, why don't we hold off sharing the files for a bit, and we'll go and talk to Roger and get Roger's thoughts on this, and then we'll go down a couple of the other questions that I have about this.
When it comes to
Roger. Hello, you're very, very quiet.
My apologies, had the mic boom flipped up.
Aha.
I think with parent and grandparent localities appearing in the tables in NaPTAN, sometimes it's just useful to be able to see those things. If you have a child or grandchild locality that you're assigning as your primary locality, somebody might come back to that much later, see it, not recognize what the locality is or where it is. But the fact that there is a parent or grandparent with a recognizable town name helps you out there, and you end up knowing, oh, that is a sub-locality of such and such a town.
So this is almost like Adrian Glover's point of the town and suburb being used to help the person inputting the data understand what that locality is or where it is, or kind of almost like allowing you to mentally map it a little bit better.
Pretty much, yes.
Is
yes,
that right, Roger?
That's exactly it.
Because for a lot of these, you're going to have to mentally figure out where this place is, what it's called, have the local knowledge to know what it's called, and whether its name has changed from Tunbridge Woods to something else. You can see I've got such a good memory for names. The Tumbledown Woods have become the Winton Estate. So it's kind of one of those things of people will call things by different names, and yous are all very aware when things change and when localities change names, when places change names. So we need to figure that out. Just moving on, because I know that we've got time and we need to get to, and time actually exists. The locality centre. So I'm just going to run through what people have written. I seem to, just a second, I'm just going to zoom in because that's a bit small. I seem to remember that the definition of the locality centre changed over the course of the original National Gazetteer entries. We certainly didn't change the ones that had already been done. I suspect there's a range of interpretations on this. That is really good history to know. Thank you to whoever wrote that. A locality centre is the assumed geographic centre of a locality. If this falls outside the locality, there is a trigger to check the stop and locality names and coordinates. I don't think that's quite it, but that's really interesting. Where someone in the locality is most likely to start their trip, i.e. on foot. Centre point of the locality, where the generically journey planning to somewhere you are unsure where you want to go to. Did I get that right? So it's the centre point of the locality where you generically might want to go to. The most central point of the locality area where someone is likely to board the bus. Should be the geographical centre of the area in real terms on the map rather than the area drawn by existing bus stops, planners or start points from this journey. None of this makes sense with what's in the locality centre field, so I'll come to this in a second. When producing via locations, a bus that might touches the area might not mention the locality, especially if it doesn't go via the locality centre. The most popular destination for a place which may or may not be the geographic centre. A locality centre should be used to journey plan as a last stop with no walking past the final point of that locality. So, those are all brilliant. The locality centre is a Boolean of 1 or 0. No, I don't understand it either. So if anyone has any thoughts on why locality centre is a 1 or a 0, that would be amazing to help me understand it.
It's
and I think
yes or no,
Mark,
yes
Roger, and Andy were competing to be the teacher's pet. So we'll go with Mark and then Andy. No, we'll go with Andy first because Andy seems to be the one who's got it.
It's a yes or no. The locality centre is a yes or no question. And what happens on the journey planner, or what should happen in the logic of the journey planner, is if it ends at that stop, as in if you journey plan to a locality and the journey plan goes to a stop that is dedicated to a yes locality centre, it should terminate at that stop and not walk you to the NaPTAG coordinates. Any other journey plan would then walk you to say, right, you've got off the bus at this bus stop, and here is the walk to your final destination, when that bus stop may be the final destination and is ticked yes, if it should count as a final destination. It's like if I journey plan to Newton Abbot from Bristol, my journey plan will my destination will be the rail station. Okay. If I journey plan to Newton Abbot from Torquay or from a local town, the rail station wouldn't be the final point, but a bus stop would be. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I'm trying to understand it, because one of the things that I was trying to figure out when I looked at locality centre is every NaPTAG entry can say whether they're a locality centre or not, and that's it. That it seems to be at an NPTG level. So you're saying, Andy, that there's actually a bus stop that will sit at that locality centre. So it's actually at the bus stop that says, actually, I'm this locality centre, and if you
No.
come to me, I'm the final destination for that locality.
Yeah, no, not quite. The locality centre point, the coordinates, is the final destination if you journey plan to a locality. But if the journey plan gets you to a stop, which is also ticked yes as a locality centre, it will terminate you at that stop without having to walk to the centre point.
Ah, so if there's a locality centre that's 20 metres away from the bus stop, it doesn't tell me to then walk the 20 metres. It just says you've reached it because 20 metres is close enough.
Yes.
Gotcha.
It could be the bus stops are a mile apart. You know, you could have a bus stop at the end of each of the town centre, and they could still be the locality centre because your destination to that point or one of those points, you have reached your destination. It doesn't automatically say now walk here.
Yeah, now walk half a mile till you reach the centre point between the 2 mile apart bus stops. Okay.
Yes.
So question for the rest of the room who answered quite differently on what locality centre was. Is that how we're using locality centres in your systems?
It is here in GM, yes.
Good.
We mark a bus stop as a locality centre if that's where we, say Pemberton, if that's the locality in the city centre, we think, yes, these are going to be the stops where someone has reached Pemberton, as in generically the middle of it. It might be a group of stops around a crossroads, or all the stops on the main high street with all the shops on. They'll be the locality centre.
Right. So is there anyone who's producing data that this is kind of a newish concept for? Roger and then Neil.
Well, are we talking about two different things here? Because looking at NatGas at the moment, I'm seeing that each locality has a set of coordinates associated with it. I haven't downloaded the actual CSV files to see what it looks like in there, but we have an easting and northing. You can also, of course, have a locality that has no stops in it because it's an unused locality. You should trim it out, but they can exist. So that obviously needs a geographic location, otherwise it can't be displayed on a map. And if you look at Ito World, you will find them sitting there. So are we, when we're talking about these NatGas concepts like locality center, are we talking about how they are used in the NaPTAN stops table, or are we talking about how they're actually used within NatGas?
So there is only one locality center field, and it's held in NaPTAN, but its use is kind of a little bit blurred in the schema and its definitions and things. So this is why I was asking the question, because I think it's one of those things that's slightly blurred. I know that you're talking about the area that is of a locality, and we'll get to that probably in the second or third round on the NubTigs as we start to really unravel some of this. But for the moment, this locality center is a field that comes up on NaPTAN that was a Boolean, and just trying to understand how people are using it and how people think about this.
I think what agents get, because when we create a locality, you put coordinates in, which is just a specific single point of coordinates. Now, I think you can have a locality, stops within that locality, if you don't mark any of them stops as being centre of locality. Maybe centre of locality for bus stops is maybe a wrong term. Maybe it should be main stops. But if you have stops within a locality and don't mark any of them as a centre of locality, I think a journey planner will then try and just journey plan a journey straight to that centre point of the coordinates that is listed for that hierarchy. And I think some journey planners actually don't take into account locality centre bus stops, because I've had some third-party journey planners that I've looked at, and then when I've put, say, Wigan, which is a very big town, it's tried journey planning to somewhere a mile and a half outside of the middle of Wigan.
Interesting.
Even though there's bus stops in the middle of Wigan that are marked as this is the centre. These
So
are the centre locality points.
this is one of the ones that we need to also ensure that the producers, sorry, the consumers of this data really understand what the locality centre field means and what it's talking about. Let's go to Neil.
Yeah, as a data consumer, again in the UK, there's no definition on a map as to what a CBD of an area is, a central business district. And to me, if the NaPTAN bus stops are being defined as city centre, this to me is the only source of a national data set for which I can use to build a polygon, a blob on a map, to define a city centre. And I can use that then in downstream analysis of which stops or which services are serving city centres, what the populations are, what shops are in that city centre, what the market size is, the patronage numbers heading into the city centre as opposed to stops prior to the city centre. So as a consumer, if those booleans are being used as described, it's incredibly useful, and it's incredibly important to leverage, again, the local knowledge, because there's no national data set of defining what a city centre is.
Yeah, that's really good, and that's a really, really great perspective on how this data is used and how it sits. Andy.
2 points. Many city centres will have their own locality, as in Bristol city centre. You know, Bristol have got a city centre, Exeter has got a city centre, and that is a child of Exeter. You know, Bristol, I think, has got Bristol is the grandparent, and then there's another parent, and then the child is the city centre. So the hierarchy is, does work. And again, that one can be used by where you are at that time when you're journey planning. If I'm in London, if I go to London and someone asks where I'm from, I won't say Heathfield because they won't have a clue where I am. I won't even say the parent of Heathfield, which is Bobby Tracy. I will say I'm from Torquay, which is miles away. It's not even the parent. It's the hierarchy of where I'm from. The other one was someone said just now about unused NPTG localities and removing them as a NPTG locality once they're unused. The problem with that is many suburbs and very small villages don't have bus stop, and you won't be able to journey plan to that location if they don't have an unused locality. So the unused localities are required in NPTG.
So just to unpack that and get my head around it, thinking of a small village just outside a town that might have no stops, but it would tell you to hop off a bus stop that was close-ish and then indicate that you needed to walk along the road to reach the village. Is that the sort of thing that you would need? I've gotcha.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Are there, so here's a question. I know that we're constantly building stuff, but are there localities that need to just like disappear? Are there localities that no longer exist? Or if it's like Tumbledown Woods, it's now split into multiple smaller localities, and Tumbledown Woods is just a locality that should either be renamed or just is deceased, deleted from the database or something.
Old localities, updating of old localities is paramount. We did an exercise with Cornwall recently, or a couple of years ago now, actually. No one could journey plan to the Eden project, but you could to Bodenick something or other, and the place hasn't been known by the village name for years. You would never journey plan to something Bodenick, I think it was called. Anyway, you do journey plan to the Eden project. So we renamed Bodenick, whatever it was, to the Eden project.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very easy to do in the NPTG system at the moment.
Good. And we'll get onto that in 2 minutes. I'll just hear from Roger, and then I'm going to have a look at how people update NaPTAN, and then we're going to go on to another question.
Hi, yes, I hadn't actually appreciated the idea of villages with no stops that you needed to plan to. That's a very interesting point. We do occasionally find completely purposeless localities, and it's usually where somebody who's created a locality in the past, not created any stops for it, then at some point in the future somebody else has actually created stops, hasn't found the locality for some reason, and has created a duplicate, and so you end up with two localities, one of which will have a qualifier and one of which won't usually, one of which is totally unused. For journey planning purposes, because the names match, it's useless to have. So in those cases, yes, you do occasionally find a locality that's been created in error that needs to be deleted.
Yeah, that is one of the things that we don't appear to actually have currently, but that's just a little mild problem that we're going to probably find it. We will find a solution for. So just moving along, we're going to pop up the top of this because there was that question that I asked, the relationship between NPTG and NaPTAN editing, because that moment came up where some people, the NaPTG NPTG suburbs were ages old and hadn't been updated in years and didn't make local sense. So just having a look through to get people's pieces. Can edit NPTG via website, but are restricted by importing into NaPTAN editing software only by rebuilding entire database. Changes are only imported once a year or so. So you can edit them in the website, but to update them, you've got to basically rebuild your whole system's database. Gotcha. We can do an edit NPTG via the website, and we're the same people who also edit NaPTAN. I would not like to see these two functions separated. We edit current NPTG localities, e.g. grid references, and we add new ones. We do both NaPTAN and NaPTIG. Could the person who did that one just let me know if you do that in your software or via the website?
Via the website, and then we're going to update our software as well.
Great, thank you. Nottinghamshire edit the NPTG on the website. We in Wicker are able to edit the NPTG info on the website. GM, our own NaPTAN management software and our own NaPTAN tool, we select the locality that is the stop and whether it's not the center. NPTG edit via website. I can edit my NatGaz, but only do so rarely. Could the person who did this one just speak up and let me know what software you use, or is it a home bake?
That was me. I used the website to do the editing.
Okay, cool. So you use the website to do the editing and then download it into your software.
Well, it doesn't need to be downloaded into. Well, yes, it does, doesn't it? Because if the localities change, to be honest, it happens so rarely that. Yes, you do. You have to update your NPTG intervals during the year. I do get prompted for that, so yes.
Cool. We download the NPTG data into our system weekly, but can also manually update it directly. Is this so? This person, are you talking about updating NaPTIG in your software? Do you edit the NaPTIG records, or do you do them via the website?
That was me. Yeah, we edit it on the website, on your website. But if we need an edit and we need it in our journey planner this week, I'll also, rather than wait for next week's download and import into the DEVA system, we can then make the same change in our local DEVA system to the NaPTIG data, so it's used immediately.
Cool. But then you just edit it on the website anyway, so that everyone sees it. Can I just ask, and I don't have a voting thing here, so I'm just going to ask people to yell out. Apart from Andy, who can edit it in DEVA but also uses the website, is there anyone at all on this call who manually edits who edits NaPTIG and then uploads the data onto the website, or do you all just use the website editor? So is there anyone who does an export of the XML from their system and uploads their NaPTAG records? I'm going to give you another few seconds to speak up. I'm going to take that as a resounding no, although Andrew,
No.
you took a deep breath, so I'm wondering if you were just
So
trying
no,
to figure it out what you did.
No, so what we do is on our own, we update the NaPTAG, we add the actual new name, place with all the coordinates, and we kind of duplicate that onto our database, so it marries up.
So you do it on the website and in your own system.
Yeah, that's right.
So you wouldn't export it from your system and push it to NPTG as an
No.
XML or anything like that?
Not yet.
Okay, really good to know. So as far as I can tell, this is making my life a heck of a lot easier, because as far as I can tell, uploading NPTG data ain't needed. It's actually editing it on the website is the thing that you all need. Undoubtedly, somebody will email me with an entirely different thoughts on this. I will look forward to receiving that. So somebody says not aware that we could edit, but would like to. Only data producers can edit data, not data consumers. If you need data edited, you will need to contact the local authority and get them to edit that data. That's just if you're a data consumer who wrote that. So
if you are a data producer that wants to access, if you email the inbox, they'll be able to set that up. But I think you can request it on the website.
Andy,
can I jump in on that, Adrian? Sorry, one of my local authorities, actually, Adrian sat next to you, or on my screen he is, edits Bournemouth, Poole, Christchurch, but he can edit Christchurch because it's still part of Dorset.
Is that part of the long-standing Christchurch issue?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
don't have an answer for that right now, I'm afraid. So
Yeah.
I will sideline that question if I can, and we can pick that one up offline.
Andy, I've got myself and Lucy B, who's also a service designer. She's working on what needs to happen so that we can split out. So one of the things that needs to happen is we need to have an archive facility that works, because it's not worked since 2000 I think 2013 was the last time I spotted an archiving actually working in old NaPTAN. So we've got to figure out how we're going to archive with new NaPTAN. And once we've got that, we can then figure out how to split. It's kind of one of those little weird dependencies, because if you need to get rid of any stops or remove the stops from an ACTO code, we've got to have a facility for doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I just sort of let you know. It sounds simple to split an ACTO code. It sounds simple to create one. We sat down and just went, yeah, but what if you need to do this? Can we do this yet? And it's like, no. So there's all these nice little dependencies that pop up. Right. We've got half an hour. So I would like to spend half an hour just trying to make sure that we all think we do the things to make it work the way that everyone thinks we make it work. Because I know that Dan Saunders and a lot of people have ideas of how these names fit together, but I want to get the thoughts from both the producers and the consumers, how you think these fields fit together. So how do I know if this is the high street that I want? I've got two high streets there. They're literally just called High Street Bus Stop, High Street Stop, and High Street Stop C. I love the fact that one doesn't even have an indicator. There's over 1,000 of them. So I would like you to take some time. It's over on number 5. We've got common name, short common name, street, locality, and indicator. Take a deep breath, think of an example, and show me using orange if you're a producer and blue if you're a consumer, how you think these fields should fit together. Which one you think should go first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Just copy them and play around with it. I'm going to give you, just grab a little space on the mural and do it your own way. They're all going to be different. They should be similar, but I think they're all going to have little differences in them. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Just give me one example and show me how you think these fit together. using these fields. So I know that you do these different things, but some people put locality first, some people put locality last. How do we build this up? What's the way that we should be telling the consumers this is the ideal way that we build it up? And I just want to make sure that everyone's thinking in the same ways and has the same thoughts here. So let's just give you 5 minutes.
5 minutes later.
Okay, so we've got almost no time left. Hopefully people have made sense. It'd be really interesting for any of the consumers, any of the people who use NaPTAN data, to let us know what you would have expected to see if you haven't had a chance to put it in. So I'm going to zoom in and read my way through some of these. So locality, common name, indicator on street, e.g. Ashford, Bank Street, stop A on Bank Street, or locality indicator common name on street, e.g. South Ashford adjacent Bramley Gardens on Kings North Road. Short common name is only used for RTI and on-bus signage. Cool. So we've got here Enfield Street, Osmoke Road, Pemberton, parent locality, Wigan, indicator opposite. So that would be Enfield Street on Oskirk Road, be Pemberton, Enfield Street, Oskirk Road, opposite. No, I got indicator wrong. No, I'm just not even going to try it because my brain is just not doing that today. Locality, Geesborough Street, Westgate, common name, marketplace indicator written on the flag to pinpoint the actual stop. The problem comes when duplicate names are held as errors. A smaller place like Dunsdale Main Street Village A only has one stop and people would search for Dundale as village as the common name is too generic. But Dunsdale Main Street, Dunsdale Village A is not currently allowed. So this is the Tottenham Court Road station on Tottenham Court Road and Gower Street problem, where you're repeating the name of the place multiple times and it's triggering that business rule error, which is not helpful because for some reason the business rule's there, but it's not actually aiding us help the users in the way that they would expect to find that bus stop. So let's try another one. Locality, main road, indicator, common name. Pemberton, Oskirk Road, opposite Enfield Street, Hindley, Atherton Road, outside the Bird in Hand pub, although it depends on the indicator. Locality, main road, common name, indicator is stop A is used. Wigan, Hindley Road, stop A on Manchester Road. Cool. Let's try another one. Locality, street, indicator, common name. We seem to have locality always first, but there's a couple of little changes here. Mansfield Woodhouse, High Street, opposite Marketplace. In some instances, indicator comes after common name, e.g. Arnold Front Street, Stand 1. In instance, the common name and street are the same, so it shouldn't be duplicated. Locality, e.g. Burton Street, e.g. High Street, common name, e.g. Bargates. Short common name may be used as an alternative for common name on RPTI screens with limited characters. Locality, common name, short common name, street indicator. Locality is the most important to differentiate all high streets. Definitely. Adrian, you've got your hand up. I'm going to let you interrupt me attempting to try to read this out and make sense of it.
I'm not sure if I've typed my things onto the wrong mural, but the point I'm trying to make is I think that the locality name, and I'm not necessarily talking about the NPTG locality name. I'm talking about the name that the people use coming out of their mouths. The locality name needs to come first. So, for example, you need to have Christchurch High Street rather than High Street, Christchurch, because people don't think like that. And if you do it that way, you can also then have, Winton High Street, for example, or, as long as you stick that way, that's fine. But if you're going to do High Street, and then the name of the place, when they're displayed alphabetically, there's going to be a whole long list of H's, and that's not necessarily very helpful.
Good point. I have a comment here from a consumer. Some consumers don't want the locality as the stop name then becomes too long, and geographic location can provide context in some mapping systems. So what we're trying to unpick here, and maybe I should have explained it a little bit more, is unpick how we're composing that long name and composing that differentiating name from the fields that we've got. So there's a thought that by using the fields in a particular order, everyone who consumes it should be able to easily build the same name. So it doesn't matter which planning system you're on, you can have a decent journey. To do that, we need to be really clear which one should come first, which one should come second, which one you don't use because it's used only for the on-screen indicators or the on-bus indicators, what an indicator should be and shouldn't be. Because I've got some where they've got stand A as part of the name, and then they've also got stand A in the indicator. So there's some funny little weirdnesses as well that I just kind of wanted to unpick. Does that make a bit more sense? Have I unpicked this enough? I think there's more to unravel here. Roger.
And I think the general thing to bear in mind here is that the rules for how to present these names get complicated depending on where you're presenting them. If you are presenting it in a journey planner, then the rules used to be fairly simple. It was locality, common name, indicator, ignore street, and ignore short common name. That was your search term. But users have apparently driven a change to make the name more like plain English. So instead of Bramley Gardens adjacent, you end up with adjacent Bramley Gardens. I'm not sure I've ever been 100% on board with it, but if that's how people want to search, then we need to accommodate it. If you're talking about how to present the name, though, on a flag, then we wouldn't do the same thing. If we're talking about how to present it on a timetable, then we wouldn't necessarily want to do the same thing where the indicator appears in the common name. We would want to dispense with the indicator where the locality appears in the common name likewise. So just up the road from Bramley Gardens, we have Kings North Road Post Office on Kings North Road. Obviously a redundancy to present both bits of information. So it's not always as simple as just A, then B, then C.
What I think you've hit on there, Roger, though, is why the name and why all the information is decomposed into separate fields. Because by having those separate fields, you can swing and adjust when you need a piece of information. Like your Kings North Road Post Office doesn't need to list the street because the stop name is clear enough at one point. At another point, it might need to have Taunton Mills, Kingston Mills Post Office. I have no idea. I just made up a name there. But it's just kind of like the locality might be needed in some places and not others. So by having it as separate fields, people can decompose it. But it's trying to ensure that everyone's thinking about these in the same way. And I get a sense that we're close, but there's a lot of slips. There's a lot of information that's going into one field that should actually be decomposed into another field or put into another field rather than decomposed, because that's a slightly more technical term on data. There's information about the stop that should be made up of little blocks of locality, common name, street, indicator, etc. And those blocks, we've got a little bit mangled, and we're putting some information into spaces where it shouldn't be, and that's what I'm just trying to unpick.
Yeah, some of it's necessary, unfortunately. The Kings North Road Post Office example is a classic one. The reason we're calling it Kings North Road Post Office instead of just Post Office is because it's in the South Ashford locality, which is a child of Ashford, and Ashford has multiple post offices. You're not allowed to use the same common name for dissimilar groups of stops, geographically separated groups of stops, within the same hierarchy, because essentially anything in South Ashford belongs to Ashford and therefore needs to have a separate common name. So we have to call it Kings North Road Post Office, despite the fact that it obviously causes problems. And it throws an error, and we suppress it in ETO.
I'm ignoring errors because we're ignoring business rules. That's been one of the things that we went through, all of the business rules, and there were so many exceptions to every single one of the 137 of them that we said there are no valid business rules. The only valid business rule that we've ever run is your modification date after your created date. And we had to do a little bit of cleanup to ensure that that actually ran. But that is literally the only business rule that we've started to put in. Oh, I'm getting the biblical weather right now. Adrian Glover.
Yes, just picking up on a point that we had a bit earlier, we're almost saying it out loud, all of it ourselves, and that is the syntax that we use, the names that we use. We need to bear in mind that we're not the only data consumers and users of this, and that bus stop destination boards on the front of the vehicles, bus stop flags, travel line, Google, everybody that gets the data needs to present it in a common format so that when someone is searching for North Road Post Office, they get the correct North Road Post Office. Oh, and then when the bus comes along, they know where it's meant to be going to because it says so on the front.
That's a really good point, and I think that's where I understand that all these kind of little building blocks of the name got put together, but it's trying to figure out that we all understand those building blocks of names, and when we've made choices to make things make more sense locally, there's actually support for that, and that does make sense, and people are aware that we've called it this because that's what makes most sense to the people catching the bus in this place, because otherwise we're creating a beautiful thing within a perfect vacuum, which we all know doesn't exist.
We're also going to have a problem if we're not careful, in that, can you just hold on a moment? Sorry, I got an interruption. Right, sorry about that. We've also got the situation which we've got to manage where anomalies occur because anomalies just do. Because if we're not careful, we will make our syntax, our schema, our plan for all of the stop details that work, and they're okay, but then you will get that awful little one that just will not behave inside the schema. And that's, I mean, I've got several of them, unfortunately, in our patch, where, for example, Christchurch High Street has to be Christchurch High Street on every day except Monday. And then we need a different stop that pretends to be Christchurch High Street on Mondays because the actual High Street is shut for a market. So if you're not careful, the journey planner gets it all wrong on a Monday. So we have to be very careful about that. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it can cause enormous amounts of confusion and or work for everybody.
That's actually a really good one that I'd never thought of the fact that occasionally streets shut here, and that's such a great example. So thank you for that, Adrian. Andy.
The easiest form to get the way the name is put together, the locality, the common name, the indicator, or the locality, indicator, common name, is the quick guide to the NaPTAN stop point naming, which was pushed out by Transport Direct. I can't find a date on this document, but it was on the NaPTAN website up until very recently, and I still produce it and post it to all of my new stop owners as a guiding tool, and it goes through what a common name is and what indicators should be before the common name or which ones should be after. Actually, it doesn't say that. It tells you all the ones that should be before and everything else should be after.
So that's really good. One of the things that I fear is that you use it and your 30-something people use it, and I'm wondering how many other people use it, but also how many of the consumers would think to look there. And this is part of what we're also trying to look at, is how we can make this stuff easier to understand, because literally reading a couple of 100 pages of schema to try to make sense of this is not user friendly, and is not the way to make people want to use this data, and is not the way to help people understand the best ways to use this data for the end users, which is the passengers, so that it all makes sense. So Andy, I will definitely have a look at that, and I will see how we could do some of those weird, wonderful, anomalistic moments. Roger.
Hi, sorry to jump in again. I'm starting to wonder, do we actually need a compound name field in NaPTAN? Something that would be auto-populated from the locality, common name indicator, etc., according to a set of rules, but which is then editable so that a human being can make it make sense.
That's a really interesting thought, and it'd be great to hear from some of the consumers of the data.
Yeah, would people hate that idea?
Because I know that somebody, Dave Mountain, has some very, very clear thoughts on how this should be put together, and he is finding it very frustrating that he literally can't put the full names together mechanically because of the ways that, for example, the indicator field is being used by a lot of people. Indicators should only be a short number of things, but there's 14,000 entries. 14,000 different entries in indicator field. And this is one of the things that we kind of want to help everyone get their heads around, so that we can start just quietly in the background chugging away, not saying you'll fix it tomorrow, but saying let's just slowly trend towards a slightly tidier NaPTAN, a slightly more consistent NaPTAN in some of these fields and some of the ways that we use it, that still allows for all of the craziness of the Christchurch High Street bus stop is a bus stop every day apart from a Monday when it's a market and it's this bus stop over there. And how do we do that sensibly and smartly and intelligently that allows users and consumers and everyone to do it? Big questions. We've got 8 minutes left. I'm going to run out of voice in a moment. Let's scroll across. Ignore which fields do we use and do you use them, because I think a lot of you have answered that. What I'd love to get, as always, at number 7 is your feedback. I really want to know what stuff of today has given you joy, what's been good and useful, what's been the stuff that we should double down on doing. What's frustrated you? What's not been good or useful? What's made you go, why is this not working? And what things have made you sad? What things are missing? What should we be going? What should be happening on these? So I want you to think about today and some of the other public meetings and just let us know what we could be changing there, because you know that we read this, you know that we act on it, you know that we work on this. And I'm more than happy to chat for the next 8 minutes if people have, or 7 minutes if people have any questions or any thoughts or anything that you think we should just continue delving into. This is obviously not solved today. This is going to be one of those ones that I fear goes on for a while. And I think there might be some ideas that we might need to go away and think about how we tackle some of these problems. But one of the big things from me from today has been understanding that you all use the website for editing NaPTAG. I will start emailing and hunting down anyone who doesn't use the website. Not that we want to hunt you down and get rid of you. We want to hunt you down and understand how you're doing it otherwise. But if you're using the website for doing NaPTAG, we think that's what pretty much everybody does. And that's actually a really, really interesting finding for us, because we've not been able to find that out till now. Oh, I like that. Reviewing your NaPTGs. You could start doing it now, or you could wait until we're moving NPTG across onto the new platform. It's up to you. It would be one of those interesting points to have a look at. Is there something in chat, or is that a hands up? Read the conversation. Indicator field should be constrained drop down rather than free text. Yes, Neil, that is very, very much very much one of the problems that we've got. We also have weirdly inconsistent ways of doing similar things. So some people put in stop point A and some people just put in A. Some people put in stop point bracket A and some people put in stop point A without the brackets. So this is how you get to 14,000 different entries very, very, very quickly. And that's one of the things that we want to just kind of start going, how can we allow you to understand how it should be done or how it could be done? What's the best way that everyone agrees to do it? And then how can we help you kind of work towards that way without saying, hey, you've got to fix all of your indicator fields tomorrow. And that's a heck of a lot of work. I'd rather give you some nice tools so that you can see how you're getting along with smoothing out your indicator field and things like this.
I do agree with the drop-down box, but it makes it difficult if you've got a bus station with 23 bays. You suddenly have 23 bays written, and then what if suddenly somebody builds a bus station and there's 25 bays? Where do you ever end the number?
That's really good, and that's a really good point that is well worth thinking about. And this is why a drop-down might not be the answer, but it might be a constraint or a question, or being able to see how many different fields you've got in an indicator, because some of them are just, they differ by a space. So the same things reflected a couple of times, but they differ by a space. And for humans reading it, it's not a big problem. For machines reading it, hey, those are two entirely different things, and I don't understand how humans see them the same, because machines are smart, but not that smart. Adrian.
Our NaPTAN management, sorry, I've just put it in there, Mark. Our NaPTAN tool, it has we write in free text, but it reverts to a set of rules in the background to suggest a different, so if we wrote adjacent, it would say use ADG, and you just click a button and say, it has the logic behind it. That's what I'm trying to think. So the example of stand 1, 2, 3 for infinite number, as long as you wrote stand, it will allow stand and a number after it and say, yes, this is right.
Yeah, I think that's interesting in doing it via rules. And I think some of those rules, it's more just getting everybody to look at the rules and go, these ones make sense. This makes sense to me. This allows me to express what's actually physically on the ground that someone's going to see.
For risk of mentioning that swear word term at the beginning, I think our NaPTAN management tool was built on the rules that were in the schema.
See, I know, and I'm not. It's not that the schema tries to have some rules. Like I went through all the different places that we had rules, and there's a couple of public meetings about rules, and I think I should run another one to bring all of the rules back around and just talk about how many of them are balked and are inconsistent and overlap and don't make sense. But there are 137 of them, I think, that I found across all the different platforms. There isn't consistency in how they measure things, how they're applied, anything like that. And for every single one, there is a large percentage, a large number, and I'm talking more than 1,000, exceptions that need to be applied to every single rule, which to me says that they're not a rule that we want to automatically apply, because there'll be 1,000 or more stops that somebody has to go through and do something manually to. And that's what we're trying to understand, and just use these to up the data quality as much as possible, because that's what the rules are aiming for, making good data. Let's make our data good, but also make it represent what's on the ground. Adrian, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I was just going to make a point, and Jonathan Bigwood's been reading my mind. I was going to say that down here, our bus stations have stands. So there's stand A, stand B. In Scotland, it's a bus stance, and we have bays and all of that. That's all well and good, but bearing in mind that we need to be using the language that the people are using and that the people need to do, all of those need to somehow be interchangeable, because someone using a journey planner from Scotland is going to expect to see bus stance A at Bournemouth bus station, for example, even though we wouldn't dream of calling it that ourselves. I'm offering no answers here, just making an awful observation.
Because also in London, at a bus stand, you cannot catch a bus, you can only hop off. At a bus stop, you can catch a bus, but not at a bus stand. But you can catch a national coach at a bus stand within a bus station, because it's a coach. Oh my God. My brain starts to, don't even get me started on what's going on with some of the coach stops.
However, our job is to serve the travelling public, and therefore somehow the transport professionals, that's us, are going to have to get our head around it and make it as easy as possible.
And I think that's part of just kind of saying the thingy has an A on it, and it'll be called this, and ensuring that the words on your phone and the words on the street line up enough that I can tell that I'm at the right place.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing, because when I used to be able to travel and I used to go to other countries, there are some countries where I don't read the language at all, and I would just have to use the word that is written here that I can't quite make sense of, and the word that is on the display seem to be the same, and the letter seems to be the same, so this must be the place where I need to be to catch the thing. That's what it should be like. You shouldn't actually need to cognitively understand the difference between a stand, stance, and a stop to know this is a place where a bus will be and I can hop on the bus.
And do bear in mind that a place like this, or indeed London, or indeed Manchester, anywhere with an airport, has quite a large influx of foreigners that don't speak this language properly or well or able to, and therefore we need to cater for them, just like you've said.
Well, I am a foreigner who reportedly doesn't speak English quite that well, according to a subsection of my friends.
We're all foreigners when we're overseas.
We're all foreigners. We're all. But it is one of those things, because there are people who are severely dyslexic, like my father, who would struggle to read the words, but could clearly match things up. Even if he couldn't make the letters out in between, would see that those two things are the same. We need to consider all these different accessibilities, because accessibility is more than a ramp or a wheelchair access or something like that. It's also being able to cognitively figure out that you're at the right place.
So this, coming from the data consumer perspective, and expanding the languages out internationally, the indicator is something that's typically provided as a separate field, and that way the journey planner can then provide for example, the words platform in the appropriate language. So in German it would be Gleis or something. So it's then you're able to then not customize, translate the interface right down to the right level, and so it's even so the name wouldn't necessarily match there, it then provides that a little bit more kind of context there.
And I
absolutely agreed. Sorry, absolutely agreed. But therefore, we've got to use standard languages in our own data so that the translation engine can pick it up and do it properly.
There's also there's a lot of, and this is why I talk about the name being decomposed. We've run about 5 minutes over, so I wanted to thank everybody for their time and for their energy and for their input. This has been absolutely brilliant. Hopefully this makes it's starting to make some sense. Now, I did have a list of what I was going to be doing next. Just give me 2 seconds, talk amongst yourselves, and I'll find my nice list of what's coming up next on NaPTAN. I wrote it a couple of weeks back. Here we are. Next will be coach stops. We're going to try and tackle the wonderful world of coach stops. I don't even know why. It's not working dreadfully well. There's some coach stops that don't make sense. We want to really understand that we've got coach stops that are going in right. And I think it's very much like this of there's some rules, there's some ideas, and there's some realities, and the wonderful clash between all of those things has led different people to do slightly different things. So any feedback, throw it up on the mural, drop us an email, let us know what you think. I'm going to cut this into some kind of video. I'll also try to cut in the mural so it's not just 2 hours of me talking to a blank screen. And we will, I'll have that up hopefully by Friday evening.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Right. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.